The heart doesn't need a backyard. Yearning for the residence, I failed to see that bricks and mortar wouldn't cocoon me like someone to share delight with. I ignored all opinions about millennials suffering in this economy. I wrote a fake name on the sign-in sheet and slipped my engagement ring into my pocket, wanting to reveal as little about myself as possible. I turned on the voice memo app on my phone and placed it in my bag. The sharp scent of burning Palo Santo seared my nose and made my eyes water. It was my first visit to this well-known tarot card reader to the stars. You can record this if you want, she said as she shuffled her cards. I reached into my bag and pretended I wasn't already recording, looking around the room for any indication that this was a scam. She laid the cards in 3 stacks and asked me to place my hand on one. I picked the middle because it felt obvious to me, and she proceeded to flip the cards over one by one. Looking at them, she said, "You will have a house in 2 years." I froze. I hadn't mentioned anything about a house, yet she answered the only question on my mind. I didn't believe in any of this. Psychics, tarot card readers, astrology. I had learned the basic Taurus compatibility and how to convincingly nod at comments about signs so I could hold my own in zodiac conversation. My skepticism began when I was a child watching infomercials for psychics. It just felt like an industry that takes advantage and preys on the hopper. It might be worth mentioning. I'm agnostic and don't believe in much of anything, but I happen to be researching clairvoyance for the TV pilot script I was writing. So my friend dragged me 2 hours outside of Los Angeles to visit the famous tarot card reader. I was 4 months into a new job after being unemployed because of COVID for over a year. My bank account had taken a massive hit and the new house was nowhere on the horizon. I had no business inquiring about a house. It wasn't a financial possibility, but I was curious. "You'll have a house in 2 years." My face tingled and I felt a sharp poke in the back of my nose as I fought hard not to cry in front of this woman. I felt it all in an instant. I looked her square in the face, searching for anything to prove she was a hack. She seemed confused by my expression. This should have been good news, but after everything I'd been through, I couldn't afford to get my hopes up. I was even ashamed to tell my friend the big life question I had prepared was about a house. I knew how ridiculous that sounded. No one knew a house was all I really wanted. My eyes filled with tears, and I didn't hear anything else she said until I listened to the recording later. I spent my childhood in basic military housing in Oahu. I wasn't your typical military brat who moved all over. I mostly lived in the same townhouse in the same neighborhood until early adolescence. All our friends were also military, so I only ever spent time in apartments and condos. It wasn't until I was 12 and my parents divorced that we moved for the first time to North Carolina, where our family was split in two. I moved with my mother into a mobile home in one county, and my brother moved with our father to another. I shuttled back and forth between my parents' homes for years and started spending time in single-family houses with yards, garages, gardens, and patios after living in apartments and conjoined townhouses my whole life. I was not prepared for how excited being in a house would make me feel, like living in my own sitcom. In college, I never spent more than a year in the same dorm or apartment. I traveled with boxes that were never unpacked and lived minimally. The dream of living in a house lay buried somewhere inside me. Something about growing a lemon tree, picking the lemons, making lemonade in a glass pitcher with the lemons painted on it. That's pretty much all I could think about. Something wholesome and safe, no more packing. After graduation, my college boyfriend, Austin, and I moved to Los Angeles and into a little place that became the longest I have ever lived under the same roof. Those 8 years and 4 walls were full of career highs and lows, friendships found and lost, raving parties and dual ones, and the purging of hand-me-down IKEA furniture. During COVID, we tried to make our apartment feel bigger with mirrors and low furniture. When we couldn't take the small space any longer, we took a road trip to Florida to stay with my boyfriend's parents. I was there. It was there. As Austin watched me dog paddle in his parents' pool with a shower cap during a rainstorm, that he decided he wanted to marry me, he simply said, "What would you say if I proposed?" He asked because I had spent our whole relationship saying that I didn't need to get married. I believed that I had to have certain things in order before marrying, such as paying up my student loans and buying a house. I ignored all opinions about millennials suffering in this economy and how success for us look a lot different than it did for our parents. I ignored that even though I tried to enter in the workforce during the 2008 recession with a history degree, I said yes to Austin's proposal, as you now call it, privately accepting that the house was simply not a reality and I needed to move on. His actual proposal happened months later on an elaborately planned trip to an igloo village in Fairbanks, Alaska, where it was 30 degrees below zero and we were off the grid. I knew what we were there for. I had talked so much about wanting to see the northern lights that Austin had booked this trip to make that dream come true for me and to propose. He hadn't told me that part, but I knew. I kept picturing the ring on my finger. It took me a long time to feel excited about getting engaged. I did my hair and makeup and pretended to believe the story about hiring a photographer to take pictures of us because we didn't have the proper equipment. We took photos all of the property for an hour and then the photographer wished us a good night and left. No proposal. Maybe I was too convincing when I listed all the reasons we should wait. The following night, after an exhausting day of snowballing, the photographer texted and said he was coming back. Look outside, he texted. We did, and the entire sky was alive, dancing with the neon blues and the greens. We rushed out, putting coats over our pajamas, and took in the magic. The photographer offered to take us to his favorite spot, which ended up being the code word for the proposal. I felt a tug on my hand and saw Austin on one knee. Oh my God, yes. We tried to plan the wedding twice, but postponed it because of Omicron and then the Writers Guild strike, which saw us both lose our jobs. At that point, planning a wedding felt silly and irresponsible. We decided to elope, and on the morning that we went to sign our marriage license, I got a calendar notification and gasped. That tarot card reader said I'd have a house by today, I said. It had been exactly 2 years since I'd seen her, and here we were, about to drive to the courthouse to sign our marriage license. Everything made perfect sense. On the way to Beverly Hills City Hall, we held hands and queued up our song on Spotify, Home by Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. Oh, home, let me come home. Home is wherever I'm with you. We couldn't help but laugh at how ironic and serendipitous and irrefutable this all was. Owning my own physical home is a life goal that I may or may not ever experience. But the home I have built in this relationship is everything to me. Nothing had ever felt like home before Austin. Not Hawaii, nor Puerto Rico, not North Carolina. My home is the stack of receipt I tally on vacation to make sure we are on budget. It's the perfect way Austin makes my coffee no matter where it's from. And it's the late night fast food run for second dinner. It's our Tuesday together, and if we sign a mortgage someday, I guess that will be home too.